and the whispers of unexplained disappearances, and the nagging feeling that something more, something other, was at play in those sun-drenched waters. But before we dive deeper into the theories and the tales, let's first chart our course and define the boundaries of this watery enigma. The Bermuda Triangle gets all the press, doesn't it? Tales of vanished planes, ghost ships, and compasses spinning wildly. It's practically a household name. But what if I told you there is another, equally baffling and arguably more active zone of unexplained disappearances right here in the United States? A place where the ocean floor is littered with the wreckage of countless vessels, where pilots have reported instruments going haywire, and where entire boats have vanished without a trace, leaving behind only unanswered questions. I'm talking about the Florida Straits and the surrounding waters off the coast of Florida. Some call it the American Bermuda Triangle, and while it might not have the same level of notoriety as its Atlantic cousin, the mysteries surrounding this region are just as perplexing, just as chilling, and in many ways even more compelling. Now, before you start picturing some sort of malevolent swirling vortex sucking ships into another dimension, let's be clear. The term American Bermuda Triangle isn't an officially recognized geographical designation. It's more of a colloquial term, a way to group together a series of unexplained events that have occurred over decades, even centuries, in this specific area. Think of it as a cluster of unsolved nautical and aviation mysteries, all sharing a common denominator: the warm, inviting, yet deceptively dangerous waters of the Florida coast. So, where exactly are we talking about? Well, the boundaries are a bit fuzzy, to say the least. Unlike the Bermuda Triangle, which is generally defined by a roughly triangular area between Bermuda, Miami, and Puerto Rico, the American Bermuda Triangle is more loosely defined. Generally, it encompasses the Florida Straits, the body of water separating Florida from Cuba, as well as the Gulf of Mexico waters surrounding the Florida Keys and stretching up along the eastern coastline towards the Bahamas. It's a vast expanse of ocean encompassing some of the busiest shipping lanes in the world, as well as popular tourist destinations and vital military training grounds. And that, in itself, is part of the problem. With so much activity in the area, it can be difficult to separate the mundane explanations, human error, mechanical failure, bad weather, from something truly inexplicable. But when you start to piece together the sheer number of disappearances, the bizarre circumstances surrounding some of these events, and the long history of strange occurrences in this region, a pattern begins to emerge. A pattern that suggests that something more than just bad luck is at play in the waters of Florida. We're not just talking about a few isolated incidents here and there. We're talking about hundreds, possibly thousands of documented cases of ships, planes, and people vanishing without a trace. From small fishing boats to massive cargo ships, from private planes to military aircraft. The American Bermuda Triangle has claimed victims from all walks of life and all types of vessels. And while some of these disappearances can be attributed to known causes, many remain stubbornly unexplained, defying logic and leaving investigators scratching their heads. What makes this area so unique, so prone to these strange occurrences? Is it simply a matter of statistical probability, given the high volume of traffic, or are there other factors at play? Are there unique geographical features unusual weather patterns, or perhaps even something else, something that science can't yet explain? Over the next few minutes, we're going to dive deep into the mysteries of the American Bermuda Triangle. We'll explore some of the most baffling disappearances, examine the various theories that have been proposed to explain them, and try to separate the fact from the fiction. We look at the known hazards of the region, the unpredictable currents, the sudden storms, the treacherous reefs, and see if they can account for all the unexplained events. And we'll also delve into some of the more unconventional explanations, the ones that involve underwater anomalies, strange energy fields, and even, dare I say it, extraterrestrial activity. But first, let's take a look at the history of this region and see how the legend of the American Bermuda Triangle began. Because the stories, as always, are where we find the first clues, the first whispers of something truly extraordinary lurking beneath the waves and waiting to snatch the unsuspecting into its watery embrace. It's a history filled with pirates, shipwrecks, and secrets buried deep beneath the sand and sea. A history that might just hold the key to unlocking the mysteries that continue to haunt the Florida coast to this very day. So let's journey back in time and see what the past can tell us about the present and the enduring enigma of the American Bermuda Triangle. Let's start with the indigenous tribes, the Calusa and Tequesta. These weren't just simple fishing villages. They were complex societies deeply connected to the sea, masters of its currents and its secrets. Legends say they possessed knowledge of the shifting sands and treacherous underwater formations, knowledge that allowed them to navigate the coast with ease where European ships would later flounder. Did they know something we don't? Did they whisper warnings of unseen forces, of areas to be avoided? Their oral traditions, passed down through generations, spoke of powerful spirits residing in the waters, spirits that could be appeased or angered, spirits that demanded respect. We've lost much of that knowledge, buried beneath layers of colonization and development. Think about it. These people lived here for thousands of years, observing the patterns of the ocean, the migratory routes of marine life, the subtle changes in the weather. They saw things we can only imagine, felt things we can only speculate about. And what if some of those things weren't entirely natural? What if they encountered phenomena that defied explanation, occurrences that were attributed to the supernatural, but were in fact something else entirely? Now fast forward to the age of pirates. The Florida coast, with its hidden coves and shallow waters, became a haven for buccaneers seeking to plunder Spanish galleons laden with gold and silver. Names like Black Caesar and Gasparilla became synonymous with terror, their exploits woven into the fabric of local folklore. But were these pirates simply ruthless criminals, or were they also unwitting victims of the triangle's influence? Imagine a ship, heavily laden with treasure, navigating the treacherous waters off the Florida Keys. A sudden, unexplained squall descends, the compass spins wildly, and the ship is thrown off course, crashing onto a hidden reef. The pirates, disoriented and panicked, try to salvage what they can, but the sea claims their ship and their lives. Was it just bad luck, or was there something more at play? There's a story, passed down through generations of fishermen in the Everglades, about a pirate ship that vanished without a trace near Cape Sable. The ship, supposedly captained by a notorious pirate known only as Red Legs, was said to be carrying a vast fortune in stolen jewels and gold. According to the legend, the ship encountered a strange, luminous fog that enveloped it completely. When the fog lifted, the ship was gone, leaving no wreckage, no survivors, nothing. Some say the fog was a portal to another dimension, others that it was the work of the sea spirits, angered by the pirates' greed. Greed. Whatever the cause, the story of the Red Legs and his vanished treasure serves as a chilling prologue to the modern mysteries of the Florida Straits. And it's a story that has echoes in other disappearances, whispers of similar fogs, similar vanishings that continue to this day. Take, for example, the case of Flight 19. Now, most people have heard of Flight 19. It's practically synonymous with the Bermuda Triangle, but the details are often muddied, the facts obscured by decades of speculation and sensationalism. So, let's cut through the noise and look at what we actually know. On December 5th, 1945, 5 TBM Avenger torpedo bombers, designated Flight 19, took off from Naval Air Station Fort Lauderdale on a routine navigation training exercise. The flight was led by Lieutenant Charles Carroll Taylor, an experienced pilot with over 2,500 flight hours under his belt. The weather was good, visibility was excellent, and the planes were in perfect working order. The mission was simple: fly east for about 120 tour miles. Conduct bombing runs on a navigational target called Hens and Chicken Shoals, then fly north for 73 miles, and finally return to base, a distance of roughly 120 miles. A textbook exercise. But things started to go wrong relatively quickly. About an hour and a half into the flight, Taylor reported that his compasses were malfunctioning. He was disoriented, unsure of his position. This is where the official transcripts get really interesting. Taylor's initial report suggests confusion, but not panic. He believed he was over the Florida Keys, which would have placed him significantly off course. However, the other pilots in his squadron disagreed. They believed they were still over the Bahamas. The conflicting opinions only added to the confusion. And then the radio transmissions started to become garbled, intermittent. The tower at Fort Lauderdale struggled to get a clear fix on Flight 19's location. What followed was a desperate hours-long attempt to guide the lost squadron back to base. The tower operators tried everything they could, using radio triangulation and even asking other aircraft in the area to attempt contact. But nothing seemed to work. The transmissions from Flight 19 grew increasingly frantic. Taylor, battling failing equipment and dwindling fuel, seemed to be losing his grip. He reportedly handed over leadership of the flight to one of the other pilots, but the situation continued to deteriorate. The last clear transmission from Flight 19 was received around 7:30 p.m. Taylor's voice, strained and filled with static, could be heard saying something about not coming in closer and something about white water. Then silence. A massive search and rescue operation was launched, involving hundreds of ships and aircraft. But despite the extensive search, no trace of Flight 19 or its 14 crew members was ever found. No wreckage, no oil slicks, no bodies. Nothing. Adding to the tragedy, one of the search planes, a PBM Mariner flying boat, also disappeared with its 13-man crew. The official Navy report attributed the loss of Flight 19 to pilot error, citing Taylor's disorientation and navigational mistakes. But that explanation has never sat well with many people. How could an experienced pilot like Taylor, flying in good weather, get so hopelessly lost? And why did all 5 planes vanish without a trace, leaving no wreckage behind? The official explanation also failed to address the strange radio transmissions, the conflicting reports of their location, and the reported compass malfunctions. Some have suggested that Taylor's compasses were affected by a magnetic anomaly, a localized disturbance in the Earth's magnetic field that could have thrown them wildly off course. Others have pointed to the possibility of instrument failure or even sabotage. And then, of course, there are the more outlandish theories that Flight 19 encountered some kind of time warp or dimensional portal, or that they were abducted by extraterrestrial beings. Whatever the truth, the disappearance of Flight 19 remains one of the most enduring mysteries of the Florida Straits. It's a stark reminder of the unpredictable power of the sea and the limitations of human technology in the face of the unknown. But the story of Flight 19 is just one piece of the puzzle. The Florida Straits have claimed countless other vessels and aircraft over the years, each with its own unique set of circumstances and unanswered questions. There's the case of the SS Cotopaxi, a tramp steamer that vanished in 1925 while en route from Charleston, South Carolina to Havana, Cuba. The ship carried a cargo of coal and a crew of 32, and it was never seen again. For years, its disappearance was a complete mystery. Then, in 2015, a shipwreck was discovered off the coast of St. Augustine, Florida. After extensive investigation, the wreck was positively identified as the SS Cotopaxi. But even with the discovery of the ship, many questions remain unanswered. What caused the Cotopaxi to sink? Was it a sudden storm, a rogue wave, or something else entirely? And why did it take so long to find the wreckage? And then there's the case of the Witchcraft. Not a plane, not a massive cargo ship, but a sleek 23-foot cabin cruiser that vanished just a mile from Miami Beach in 1967. The owner, Dan Barak, took his friend, Father Patrick Horgan, out for an evening cruise to enjoy the city lights. The Witchcraft was equipped with all the latest safety features, including a two-way radio and life jackets, and Barak was an experienced boater. According to eyewitnesses, the Witchcraft was anchored just offshore when Barak radioed the Coast Guard to report that they had struck something. He didn't sound alarmed, and he said they didn't need a tow. But he asked the Coast Guard to note their location. The Coast Guard responded, but when they arrived on the scene just 19 minutes later, the Witchcraft was gone, vanished. Despite an extensive search, no trace of the boat or its 2 passengers was ever found. The Witchcraft was considered unsinkable, and it was located incredibly close to shore. How could it have disappeared so quickly and completely? These are just a few of the many unexplained disappearances that have occurred in the Florida Straits, and each one adds another layer to the mystery, another piece to the puzzle. Are these disappearances simply the result of bad weather, human error, and the inherent dangers of the sea? Or is there something more at play, something that defies conventional explanation? That's what we're here to explore. We're going to delve into the various theories, examine the evidence, and try to make sense of the strange and unsettling events that have plagued the Florida Straits for centuries. But before we do that, let's take a closer look at the geography and the history of this enigmatic region. Let's consider the currents, the weather patterns, and the unique geological features that might contribute to the mysteries of the American Bermuda Triangle. Because understanding the environment is crucial to understanding the phenomena that occur within it. The powerful Gulf Stream current, for instance, flows through the Florida Straits like a river within the sea, carrying ships and debris along at speeds of up to 5 knots. This current can make navigation challenging, and it can also quickly scatter wreckage, making it difficult to find survivors or determine the cause of a sinking. And then there are the sudden and violent storms that can erupt in the Florida Straits with little warning. Hurricanes, tropical storms, and even ordinary thunderstorms can generate powerful winds and waves that can overwhelm even the largest vessels. Those storms can also create dangerous sea conditions, such as rogue waves, which can appear suddenly and without warning, capsizing ships and sweeping people overboard. The geology of the region also plays a role. The Florida Straits are characterized by a complex network of reefs, shoals, and underwater canyons. These features can create navigational hazards, and they can also contribute to the formation of whirlpools and other unpredictable currents. And then there's the unique magnetic environment of the Florida Straits. Some researchers believe that the region is subject to localized magnetic anomalies that can interfere with compass readings and other navigational instruments. These anomalies could explain some of the reported instances of compass malfunction and disorientation in the area. So, as you can see, the Florida Straits are a complex and challenging environment, even under normal conditions. But what about the more unusual theories? The ones that suggest that something truly extraordinary is happening in this region? Well, that's where things get really interesting. We're talking about everything from time warps and dimensional portals to alien abductions and sea monsters. And while some of these theories may seem far-fetched, they have a surprising number of adherents. People who believe that the mysteries of the Florida Straits are rooted in something beyond our current understanding of the natural world. Now, I know what you're thinking. Time warps? Dimensional portals? Come on. And yeah, I get it. It sounds like something straight out of a sci-fi movie. But hear me out, because some of the evidence, circumstantial as it may be, is actually pretty compelling. Let's start with the reports of strange atmospheric phenomena. We're not just talking about the odd cloud formation here and there. We're talking about reports of swirling vortexes of light, unexplained electrical disturbances, and even cases of compasses spinning wildly out of control, even when there's no obvious source of magnetic interference. Now, you could chalk these up to instrument malfunctions or misinterpretations of natural events. But the sheer number of these reports, coupled with the fact that they often coincide with disappearances, makes you wonder if there might be something more to it. Then there are the stories of electronic fog, a term used to describe sudden and inexplicable disruptions in radio communication and navigation systems. Pilots have reported losing contact with air traffic control for minutes at a time, only to have it suddenly restored with no explanation. Ships have reported similar experiences, with their radar systems going haywire and their GPS units, giving them nonsensical readings. Again, you could argue that these are just technical glitches, but when these glitches occur in the same area, time and time again, it starts to feel like something more than just random chance. And that's where the more outlandish theories come into play. The idea that the Florida Straits might be a region where the fabric of space-time is somehow weakened or distorted, allowing for temporary breaches between different dimensions or points in time. Now, I'm not saying I believe it, but I'm also not saying it's impossible. After all, our understanding of the universe is constantly evolving, and what was once considered science fiction often becomes science fact. Look at black holes, for example. For years, they were just theoretical constructs. Now, we have photographic evidence of their existence. So, who's to say that time warps and dimensional portals are completely out of the realm of possibility? Of course, the alien abduction theory is another popular one. The idea that the Florida Straits might be a hotbed of extraterrestrial activity, with aliens using the area to conduct experiments or even abduct humans. Again, it sounds crazy, but there are people who believe it, and their stories are often chillingly consistent. They talk about strange lights in the sky, encounters with unusual beings, and missing time. Now, are these just the fantasies of attention-seeking individuals? Or is there a kernel of truth in their claims? It's impossible to say for sure. But it's worth considering that the vastness of the ocean, coupled with the relative isolation of the Florida Straits, would make it an ideal location for covert alien activity. Then there's the sea monster theory. The idea that some unknown creature lurks beneath the waves, responsible for the disappearances of ships and planes. Now I know what you're thinking. Sea monsters? Really? But remember, the ocean is still largely unexplored. We've only mapped a tiny fraction of the ocean floor, and new species are being discovered all the time. So, who's to say that there isn't some giant, undiscovered creature lurking in the depths of the Florida Straits? There have been reports of unexplained sonar readings, strange underwater noises, and even eyewitness accounts of large, unidentified creatures swimming in the area. Are these just misidentified marine animals? Or could they be evidence of something more sinister? Again, it's impossible to say for sure, but the possibility remains, however remote. So, as you can see, the theories surrounding the mysteries of the Florida Straits are as diverse and intriguing as the region itself. Whether you believe in time warps, alien abductions, sea monsters, or just good old-fashioned bad luck, there's no denying that something strange is happening in these waters. And the fact that these mysteries remain unsolved only adds to their allure. But let's move away from the more fantastical theories for a moment and delve into some of the more grounded explanations for the disappearances. Because even without resorting to the supernatural, there are plenty of perfectly plausible reasons why ships and planes might vanish in the Florida Straits. We're talking about things like rogue waves, sudden storms, and even human error. And in many cases, these factors may be enough to explain the disappearances without invoking any extraordinary phenomena. The Florida Straits are known for their unpredictable weather patterns. Sudden storms can whip up with little or no warning, creating treacherous conditions for ships and planes. Rogue waves, those massive walls of water that can appear out of nowhere, are another serious threat. These waves can easily capsize even the largest vessels, sending them to the bottom of the ocean in a matter of minutes. And then there's the human factor. Pilot error, navigational mistakes, and mechanical failures can all contribute to accidents at sea and in the air. And in a region as busy as the Florida Straits, with its heavy traffic of ships and planes, the potential for human error is always present. So, it's important to keep these more mundane explanations in mind when considering the mysteries of the Florida Straits. Because sometimes the most obvious answer is the correct one. But even if we can explain some of the disappearances with these more conventional factors, there are still many cases that remain unexplained. Cases where there's no evidence of foul play, no sign of wreckage, and no logical explanation for what happened. And it's these cases that continue to fuel the speculation and intrigue surrounding the Florida Straits. So, what's the answer? What's really happening in this mysterious region? Is it a combination of natural factors, human error, and perhaps even something more extraordinary? Or is there a single unifying explanation that can account for all the disappearances? The truth is, we don't know, and perhaps we never will. But that's part of what makes the mysteries of the Florida Straits so compelling. The sense that there's something out there, something unknown, lurking beneath the surface of the waves. And that's something that will continue to captivate our imaginations for years to come. Now, let's talk about some specific cases. Real-life disappearances that have baffled investigators and fueled the legends of the Florida Straits. These are the stories that truly bring the mystery to life, and they offer a glimpse into the real world, consequences of the unexplained phenomena that seem to plague this region. These cases are not just statistics or historical footnotes. They are tales of real people, families torn apart, and mysteries that may never be solved. And by examining these cases, we can begin to understand the true scope of the enigma that is the American Bermuda Triangle. So, let's talk about Flight 19. This is arguably one of the most famous and certainly one of the most baffling disappearances associated with the American Bermuda Triangle. On December 5, 1945, 5 TBM Avenger torpedo bombers, collectively known as Flight 19, vanished without a trace during a routine training mission off the coast of Florida. The flight was led by experienced pilot and instructor Lieutenant Charles Carroll Taylor. Taylor was a seasoned veteran with over 2,500 flight hours under his belt, including combat experience in the Pacific. The mission was supposed to be a relatively straightforward navigation exercise. They were to fly east from Naval Air Station Fort Lauderdale for about 120 miles, conduct bombing runs on a target called Hens and Chickens Shoals, then fly another 73 miles east, then turn north for 73 miles, and finally return to base along a 120-mile leg. Simple, right? Well, things started to go wrong pretty quickly. About an hour and a half into the flight, Taylor reported that his compasses were malfunctioning. He was disoriented and unsure of his location. Now, compass malfunctions happen, especially back in the 40s. But what's strange is that all the compasses on all 5 planes seem to be malfunctioning simultaneously. That's a pretty big coincidence. As the flight continued, Taylor's confusion deepened. He repeatedly radioed back to base, reporting that he couldn't see land and that the ocean looked different, almost milky. He seemed convinced that they had somehow flown over the Florida Keys and were heading out over the Gulf of Mexico, when in reality they were likely still over the Atlantic. The weather conditions began to deteriorate, further complicating matters. Strong winds and heavy seas made navigation even more difficult. The Navy dispatched a PBM Mariner flying boat, a large seaplane, to search for Flight 19. But tragically, the mariner also disappeared shortly after taking off. A nearby tanker reported seeing an explosion in the area where the mariner was last known to be. All 13 crew members on board were lost, so within a few hours, 6 aircraft and 27 men had vanished without a trace. A massive search and rescue operation was launched, involving hundreds of ships and aircraft. But no wreckage from Flight 19 or the mariner was ever found. The official Navy report attributed the loss of Flight 19 to pilot error, stating that Taylor had become disoriented and led his flight further out to sea until they ran out of fuel. But this explanation has been widely disputed, and it leaves many unanswered questions. Why did all the compasses malfunction? Why was Taylor so convinced that they were over the Gulf of Mexico when they were likely still over the Atlantic? And what caused the mariner to explode? Some have suggested that Taylor's compass had malfunctioned before and that he had a history of getting lost. But others point out that he was a highly experienced pilot and it's unlikely that he would make such a basic navigational error. Could it have been a magnetic anomaly? Some areas are known to have localized magnetic disturbances that can affect compass readings. Or could it have been something more unusual? Some theories suggest that Flight 19 encountered some kind of atmospheric disturbance, a sudden storm, or even something stranger. The disappearance of Flight 19 remains one of the most enduring mysteries of the American Bermuda Triangle, and it's a case that continues to fascinate and baffle researchers to this day. It's a stark reminder of the dangers that lurk in those waters and the limits of our understanding of the forces at play. It's a story that speaks to the vulnerability of even the most skilled and experienced individuals in the face of the unknown, and the search that followed only deepened the enigma. The TBM Mariner flying boat, sent out to locate the missing squadron, vanished without a trace itself, adding another layer of tragedy and bewilderment to the already perplexing situation. 27 crewmen gone. Just like that. No distress signal, no wreckage. It was as if the sea itself had swallowed them whole. The official Navy report attributed the loss of Flight 19 to navigational error on the part of the flight leader, Lieutenant Charles Carroll Taylor, suggesting he became disoriented and led his squadron further out to sea, eventually running them all out of fuel. But this conclusion has been met with skepticism and criticism over the years. Taylor was an experienced pilot, a veteran with over 2,500 flight hours, many of them in that very area. Could he really have made such a fundamental mistake? His family certainly did believe it. They fought to have the official report changed, arguing that it unfairly blamed him for the tragedy. And there were other inconsistencies. Radio transcripts from the flight suggest that Taylor was indeed experiencing some kind of navigational problem, but they also hint at something more. "Both my compasses are out," Taylor reportedly said in one transmission. "I'm trying to find Fort Lauderdale. I'm over land, but it's broken. I'm sure I'm in the Keys, but I don't know how far down." This statement is particularly puzzling. If Taylor believed he was over the Florida Keys, he should have been able to easily identify landmarks and orient himself. But the broken land he described suggests something was amiss, something beyond simple disorientation. Adding to the mystery, some reports indicate that other pilots in the squadron questioned Taylor's commands, suggesting they knew they were heading in the wrong direction. One pilot reportedly even radioed that if they just flew west, they would reach the Florida coast. But Taylor, for reasons that remain unclear, insisted on continuing on his course. What could have caused such a seasoned pilot to become so utterly lost and confused? Was it simply human error, exacerbated by the challenging weather conditions? Or was there something else at play? The disappearance of the Mariner, the second aircraft lost during the search, only fuels the speculation. That plane was known as a flying gas tank because it carried so much fuel, but also had a reputation for being prone to accidents. Some believe a mechanical failure caused it to explode in midair, but again, no wreckage was ever found. The lack of debris from either Flight 19 or the Mariner is perhaps the most baffling aspect of the entire affair. In the aftermath of the disappearances, a massive search was conducted, covering hundreds of thousands of square miles of ocean. Yet, despite the scale of the operation, virtually nothing was recovered. A few oil slicks and some scattered debris were found, but none of it could be definitively linked to either the lost planes or the lost airmen. It's as if they simply vanished into thin air, leaving no trace. And that lack of wreckage, that complete absence of concrete evidence, is what fuels the mystery to this day. It's what allows the speculation to run wild, and the theories, no matter how outlandish, to gain traction. Because of the absence of facts, people will fill the void with explanations, with narratives that make sense, or at least offer a semblance of understanding in the face of the inexplicable. Now, before we get too caught up in the more esoteric explanations, let's consider some of the more grounded, albeit still unsettling, possibilities. One of the most prevalent theories surrounding Flight 19 revolves around pilot error, coupled with instrument malfunction and adverse weather conditions. Lieutenant Charles Taylor, the flight leader, was reportedly an experienced pilot, but he also had a history of getting lost, having become disoriented on at least 2 previous occasions. Some argue that Taylor made a critical navigational error, leading the flight further and further out to sea, away from the Florida coastline. Adding to this, the weather on that fateful day was deteriorating rapidly. Reports indicate that squalls and heavy rain moved into the area, reducing visibility and potentially interfering with the aircraft's compasses. If Taylor became disoriented and his instruments malfunctioned, it's conceivable that the flight became hopelessly lost, running low on fuel and eventually succumbing to the elements. The TBM Avenger, while a sturdy aircraft, was not impervious to the harsh conditions of the open ocean. And with limited visibility, the chances of a successful ditching and rescue would have been slim. But even this seemingly plausible explanation has its flaws. For one, the other pilots in Flight 19, while less experienced than Taylor, were still trained professionals. It's difficult to believe that all 5 pilots would have been equally disoriented and unable to correct Taylor's alleged navigational error. Furthermore, the official Navy report initially attributed the loss of Flight 19 to cause unknown, a conclusion that was later changed to pilot error after Taylor's mother protested the original finding. This alteration has fueled suspicions of a cover-up, with some suggesting that the Navy sought to protect its reputation by placing the blame squarely on Taylor's shoulders. And then there's the question of the Mariner seaplane. If Flight 19 simply crashed due to pilot error and bad weather, what explains the disappearance of the search plane and its 13 crew members? While it's possible that the mariner also succumbed to the same adverse conditions, the fact that it vanished without a trace, just like Flight 19, adds another layer of complexity to the mystery. It suggests that something more than just bad luck and human error may have been at play. Another theory, somewhat more speculative but still within the realm of possibility, involves the presence of rogue waves or sudden, unpredictable weather phenomena. The Florida Straits are known for their turbulent waters and unpredictable weather patterns. Rogue waves, also known as freak waves, are unusually large and unexpected surface waves that can appear suddenly and without warning. These waves can be incredibly powerful, capable of capsizing ships and even damaging large aircraft. While there's no direct evidence to suggest that a rogue wave was responsible for the disappearances of Flight 19 and the Mariner, it's a possibility that cannot be completely dismissed. Similarly, sudden microbursts or downdrafts could have caused the aircraft to lose altitude rapidly, leading to a catastrophic crash. These weather phenomena are often difficult to detect and can be incredibly dangerous, especially for low-flying aircraft. Again, there's no concrete evidence to support this theory, but there remains a plausible explanation for the sudden and unexplained disappearances. But let's be honest, while these explanations offer a degree of rationality, they still leave many questions unanswered. They fail to fully account for the complete lack of wreckage, the conflicting reports, and the lingering feeling that something truly extraordinary occurred on that fateful day in December 1945. And it's this sense of the extraordinary, this feeling that something beyond the mundane is at play, that continues to draw people to the mystery of Flight 19 and the American Bermuda Triangle. So, let's now consider some of the more unconventional theories, the ones that delve into the realms of the paranormal, the unexplained, and the downright bizarre. Because in a place as steeped in mystery as the Florida coast, it's perhaps inevitable that such theories would emerge, offering alternative explanations for the events that defy conventional understanding. It's in these uncharted waters of speculation that the true allure of the American Bermuda Triangle truly resides, daring us to question the limits of our knowledge and the boundaries of our perception. One of the most persistent, and certainly the most sensational, of these theories revolves around the existence of underwater bases, not of earthly origin, mind you, but extraterrestrial. Proponents of this idea suggest that the ocean floor of the Florida coast conceals vast, technologically advanced structures used by alien civilizations for purposes unknown. These bases, they claim, could be responsible for the disappearances of ships and aircraft, either through direct interference or by creating unusual electromagnetic disturbances that disrupt the navigation systems. Imagine, if you will, a massive cloaked facility humming with alien technology, subtly altering the very fabric of reality around it, drawing unsuspecting vessels into its sphere of influence, never to be seen again. It's a notion straight out of a science fiction film, yet it holds a strange appeal for those who find conventional explanations lacking. Then there's the theory of vortexes or dimensional portals that sporadically open and close in the waters of Florida. According to this idea, these vortexes are gateways to other dimensions or even other points in time. Ships and planes that stray too close could be inadvertently sucked into these portals, transported to realms beyond our comprehension, or simply erased from existence. Think of it as a cosmic whirlpool, a tear in the fabric of space-time, capable of swallowing anything that comes within its reach. The implications are staggering, suggesting that the disappearances are not merely accidents, but rather involuntary journeys into the unknown. You might wonder then if anyone has seen one. Well, some fishermen, recounting bizarre experiences, speak of sudden fogs rolling in, compasses spinning wildly, and a feeling of profound disorientation just before their equipment malfunctions. They describe an eerie calm, a sense that the world around them has shifted, followed by an equally sudden return to normalcy, leaving them shaken and bewildered. Could this be glimpses of these dimensional vortexes, fleeting encounters with the impossible? Another, slightly less outlandish but still quite unusual theory focuses on the Earth's magnetic field. Florida, you see, lies in a region known to have significant magnetic anomalies. Some believe that these anomalies could create powerful electromagnetic fields that interfere with navigational equipment, causing ships and aircraft to lose their bearings and wander off course. This could explain why so many vessels have disappeared without a trace, simply becoming lost in the vastness of the ocean, their fate sealed by an invisible force. Imagine a pilot struggling to control his aircraft as his instruments go haywire, the compass spinning uncontrollably, the GPS displaying nonsensical readings. He's flying blind, completely disoriented with no way to determine his position or direction. It's a terrifying scenario and one that could easily lead to disaster. And of course, we can't forget the legends of sea monsters, creatures of immense size and power lurking in the depths, capable of dragging ships down to their watery graves. While there's no concrete evidence to support the existence of such creatures, the sheer vastness and unexplored nature of the ocean leaves room for the possibility, however remote. It's a primal fear, isn't it? The idea that something ancient and unfathomable exists beneath the waves, something that could swallow us whole without a trace. These stories, these legends, they tap into something deep within our collective unconscious, a fear of the unknown, a respect for the power of the ocean. But let's move away from the purely speculative for a moment and consider some of the more grounded, albeit still perplexing, explanations for the disappearances in the Florida Straits. One of the most prominent is the phenomenon of rogue waves. These are massive, unpredictable waves that can appear seemingly out of nowhere, reaching heights of over 100 feet. They're not tsunamis, which are caused by underwater earthquakes or volcanic eruptions, but rather they're thought to be the result of constructive interference, where multiple smaller waves combine to form a single enormous wave. A rogue wave could easily capsize a small boat or even damage a larger vessel, especially if it's caught broadside. And if a boat were to sink quickly, it might not leave behind any wreckage, making it appear as if it simply vanished. Then there's the issue of sudden weather changes. The Florida Straits are known for their unpredictable weather patterns. Sudden squalls, thunderstorms, and even hurricanes can develop rapidly, creating hazardous conditions for mariners. A sudden storm could disorient a pilot, damage a boat's navigation equipment, or even cause it to sink. And if the storm is severe enough, it could scatter debris over a wide area, making it difficult to locate any wreckage. Another factor to consider is the strong currents that flow through the Florida Straits. The Gulf Stream, a powerful ocean current that originates in the Gulf of Mexico, flows northward through the straits, carrying warm water and creating strong eddies and whirlpools. These currents can be treacherous, especially for smaller boats, and they can also make it difficult to navigate accurately. A boat caught in a strong current could be swept off course, run aground, or even be pulled out to sea. And if a boat were to sink in a strong current, its wreckage could be carried far away, making it difficult to find. And let's not forget about human error. In many cases, disappearances at sea can be attributed to simple mistakes such as navigational errors, mechanical failures, or poor seamanship. A pilot who miscalculates their fuel consumption, a boat captain who fails to properly maintain their vessel, or a crew member who makes a critical error in judgment. Any of these things could lead to disaster. And while it's easy to dismiss human error as a mundane explanation, it's important to remember that even the most experienced sailors and pilots can make mistakes, especially in challenging conditions. But even when we account for all of these factors, rogue waves, sudden weather changes, strong currents, and human error, there are still some disappearances that defy explanation. Cases where experienced sailors and pilots in well-maintained vessels vanish without a trace, leaving behind no wreckage and no clues. It's these cases that fuel the mystery of the American Bermuda Triangle, and that lead us to consider the possibility that something more, something unexplained, might be at play. Take, for instance, the case of the SS Cotopaxi. This cargo ship disappeared in 1925 while en route from Charleston, South Carolina to Havana, Cuba. The ship was carrying a cargo of coal, and it was crewed by a team of experienced sailors. The Cotopaxi sent out a distress signal, reporting that it was taken on water, but then it vanished without a trace. For years, the fate of the Cotopaxi remained a mystery. Then, in 2020, nearly a century after its disappearance, the wreckage of the ship was finally identified off the coast of St. Augustine, Florida. While the discovery of the wreckage provided some closure, it didn't solve the mystery of why the ship sank in the first place. What caused the ship to take on water? Was it a rogue wave, a sudden storm, or something else entirely? The answers to these questions remain elusive. And then there's the story of Bruce Vernon, a pilot who claims to have flown through a time-warping cloud formation in the Bermuda Triangle. In 1970, Vernon was flying his Beechcraft Bonanza from Andros Island in the Bahamas to Palm Beach, Florida, when he encountered a strange circular cloud. As he flew into the cloud, he experienced a sensation of weightlessness, and his instruments began to malfunction. Vernon says that he felt like he was traveling through a tunnel, and that the cloud seemed to be accelerating him forward. When he emerged from the cloud, he was surprised to find that he was already over Miami Beach, even though he should have still been several miles away. Vernon believes that he somehow traveled through a time warp and that the cloud acted as a portal, allowing him to bypass a significant portion of his flight. Now, Vernon's story is certainly controversial, and it's been met with skepticism by many in the scientific community. But it is also a fascinating account, and it raises some intriguing questions about the nature of time and space. These are just a few of the many strange and unexplained disappearances that have occurred in the Florida Straits. And while there are many different theories to explain these disappearances, none of them fully account for all of the evidence. The mystery of the American Bermuda Triangle remains unsolved, and it continues to fascinate and intrigue us to this day. It makes you wonder what really happened to those people, those boats, those planes. What unseen forces might be at play in this seemingly beautiful yet treacherous stretch of water? Could it be the unique confluence of weather patterns, the unpredictable Gulf Stream currents, or something far more enigmatic? One particularly chilling case involves the yacht Witchcraft, a luxurious 23-foot cabin cruiser that vanished without a trace on a clear, calm night in December 1967. Dan Burak, the yacht's owner, had called the Coast Guard to report that his boat had struck something about a mile offshore from Miami Beach. He assured them that the damage wasn't severe, but requested assistance nonetheless. The Coast Guard arrived within 19 minutes, but Witchcraft was gone, vanished. There was no wreckage, no debris, no sign of the boat or its passengers. The Coast Guard searched an area of over 200 square miles, but found nothing. It's as if the yacht had simply been swallowed by the sea. It's just impossible, a seasoned Coast Guard officer reportedly said at the time, shaking his head. 1 minute they're there, the next, nothing. We've seen boats sink, we've seen boats capsize, but we've never seen anything just disappear like that. Especially not in broad daylight. Adding to the enigma is the fact that Witchcraft was purportedly unsinkable, custom built with a double hull and designed to stay afloat even with significant damage. Burak was also an experienced boater, familiar with the local waters. The circumstances surrounding the disappearance defy logical explanation, fueling speculation about the area's unusual properties. Then there's the story of Flight 19, a squadron of 5 U.S. Navy Avenger torpedo bombers that vanished without trace on December 5, 1945. While on a routine training mission, the squadron, led by experienced pilot Lieutenant Charles Carroll Taylor, became disoriented. Taylor, despite his familiarity with the area, reported compass malfunctions and became convinced that his instruments were failing him. The official Navy report attributed the loss to pilot error, blaming Taylor for misinterpreting his location and leading the squadron further out to sea. However, the circumstances surrounding the disappearance are far from clear-cut. The weather conditions were reportedly calm, and the planes were in good working order. Furthermore, radio transmissions from the squadron indicated a growing sense of panic and confusion, with pilots struggling to determine their position. One chilling message reportedly stated, "We can't be sure of any direction. Everything looks strange, even the ocean." What's even more unsettling is the fact that a Mariner flying boat, dispatched to search for Flight 19, also disappeared with its 13-man crew. No wreckage from either the Avengers or the Mariner was ever found, despite extensive search efforts. The Navy's explanation of pilot error has been widely disputed, with many arguing that it fails to account for the complete lack of wreckage and the strange radio transmissions. Some have pointed to the possibility of magnetic anomalies or unusual weather phenomena that could have disoriented the pilots and caused their instruments to malfunction. Others have suggested more outlandish theories, such as the involvement of extraterrestrial forces or the existence of a portal to another dimension. Regardless of the explanation, the disappearance of Flight 19 remains one of the most enduring mysteries of the American Bermuda Triangle. It's a stark reminder of the unpredictable nature of the sea and the limitations of our understanding of the forces at play in this enigmatic region. The sheer scale of the loss, 6 aircraft and 27 men, underscores the potential dangers lurking beneath the surface. And the stories don't stop there. The SS Cotopaxi, a freighter en route from Charleston, South Carolina to Havana, Cuba, vanished in 1925. For nearly a century, its fate remained unknown, adding another layer to the mystique of the Florida Straits. Then, in 2015, wreckage believed to be from the Cotopaxi was discovered off the coast of St. Augustine, Florida, seemingly solving the mystery. However, the discovery raised more questions than it answered. The wreckage was found far from the Cotopaxi's reported route, and the circumstances surrounding its sinking remain unclear. What caused the ship to deviate so drastically from its course? Was it caught in a sudden storm? Or was there another, more sinister explanation? Adding to the intrigue is the fact that the Cotopaxi sent out distress signals before it disappeared, but the messages were garbled and incomplete. The content of those final transmissions remains a subject of speculation, with some believing they contained clues about the ship's fate. While the discovery of the wreckage provides some closure, it also serves as a reminder of the many unanswered questions that continue to haunt the American Bermuda Triangle. These are just a few of the many unexplained disappearances that have occurred in the waters of the Florida coast. Each story is unique, but they share a common thread: a sense of mystery, a lack of concrete evidence, and a lingering feeling that something extraordinary is at play. But what could be responsible for these disappearances? Are they simply the result of natural phenomena, such as hurricanes, rogue waves, or human error? Or is there something more? Something supernatural or otherworldly at work in the American Bermuda Triangle? Let's explore some of the more compelling theories, starting with the possibility of rogue waves. Rogue waves, also known as freak waves, are massive, unpredictable waves that can appear seemingly out of nowhere. They are much larger than typical waves and can be incredibly dangerous to ships and boats. While rogue waves are a known phenomenon, some believe that the waters of the Florida coast are particularly prone to them due to the confluence of strong currents and weather patterns. Imagine a small fishing boat, miles offshore, suddenly confronted by a wall of water, towering dozens of feet above them. There would be little to no warning, and the boat would be tossed around like a toy in a bathtub. The force of the wave could easily capsize the boat, sending its occupants into the turbulent water with little chance of survival. "I've heard stories," says Captain Joe, a seasoned fisherman who has spent his entire life navigating the Florida coast, "about waves that just come out of nowhere. One minute you're sailing along smooth as can be, and the next you're staring up at a monster. They say these waves can be so big they can swallow a whole ship." He pauses, takes a drag from his cigarette, and continues. "I have never seen one myself, thank God, but I've heard enough stories to know they're out there, and I wouldn't want to be caught in one." While rogue waves could certainly account for some disappearances, they don't explain everything. What about the cases where ships vanish without a trace, leaving no wreckage or debris? What about the disappearances that occur in calm weather with no sign of any unusual wave activity? For these cases, some turn to more unconventional explanations, such as the existence of underwater sinkholes. The Florida peninsula is riddled with underground caves and sinkholes, formed by the dissolution of limestone bedrock. Some of the sinkholes are massive, and some are located offshore, hidden beneath the surface of the ocean. The theory is that these sinkholes could suddenly open up, swallowing ships and boats whole without leaving any trace behind. It's like the earth just opens up and takes them, explains Dr. Emily Carter, a geologist specializing in Florida's underwater formations. We know there are sinkholes out there, some of them quite large, and we know that they can be unstable. It's not beyond the realm of possibility that a ship could be unfortunate enough to be in the wrong place at the wrong time when a sinkhole collapses. But even this theory has its limitations. While sinkholes could explain the sudden disappearance of smaller vessels, it's difficult to imagine them swallowing larger ships without leaving some kind of evidence. And what about the stories of strange lights and unexplained phenomena that have been reported in the area? For these, we must delve into the realm of the truly bizarre, explore theories that involve everything from extraterrestrial activity to time warps. One of the more outlandish yet persistent theories is that the American Bermuda Triangle is a hotbed of extraterrestrial activity. Proponents of this theory point to the numerous reports of UFO sightings in the region, some dating back decades. They argue that the disappearances of ships and planes are not the result of natural phenomena or human error, but rather the work of advanced alien civilizations. These aliens, according to the theory, may be using the area for research, experimentation, or even as a gateway to our planet. Now, I know, it sounds like science fiction, and frankly, a lot of it is speculation based on very little concrete evidence. But the sheer number of UFO sightings reported in the region is hard to ignore. Pilots, sailors, and even ordinary citizens have described seeing strange lights, unusual objects in the sky, and unexplained aerial maneuvers. Some of these sightings can be explained as misidentified aircraft, weather phenomena, or even hoaxes. But others remain stubbornly unexplained, fueling the belief that something truly extraordinary is happening in the skies above the Florida Straits. One particularly intriguing case involves the disappearance of a cargo plane in 1973. The plane, a DC-3, was carrying a shipment of livestock when it vanished without a trace somewhere over the Bahamas. No wreckage is ever found, and the circumstances surrounding the disappearance remain a mystery. But what makes this case particularly interesting is the report of a strange glowing object seen in the vicinity of the plane shortly before it disappeared. Several witnesses on the ground reported seeing a bright light moving erratically in the sky, and some even claimed that it appeared to be following the DC-3. Could this have been a UFO? Was the plane somehow abducted by extraterrestrial beings? We may never know for sure, but the possibility, however remote, remains a tantalizing one. And it's not just visual sightings that fuel the extraterrestrial theory. Some researchers have pointed to alleged anomalies in the Earth's magnetic field in the region, suggesting that these anomalies could be the result of alien technology. Others have speculated that the American Bermuda Triangle may be a window into another dimension, allowing extraterrestrial beings to travel between our world and theirs. Again, these are highly speculative theories, and there is very little scientific evidence to support them. But they do highlight the enduring fascination with the possibility of extraterrestrial life and the human desire to find answers to the unknown. Of course, the extraterrestrial theory is not without its critics. Many scientists dismiss it as pseudoscience, arguing that there is no credible evidence to support the existence of alien civilizations or their involvement in the disappearances in the Florida Straits. They point out that the vast majority of UFO sightings can be explained by natural phenomena or human error, and that the few cases that remain unexplained are not necessarily evidence of extraterrestrial activity. They also argue that the idea of aliens abducting ships and planes is simply absurd, and that there are far more plausible explanations for the disappearances. But even the skeptics have to admit that the American Bermuda Triangle is a place of strange and unexplained phenomena, and whether these phenomena are the result of natural forces, human error, or something far more extraordinary, they continue to captivate our imaginations and challenge our understanding of the world around us. And even if we dismiss the extraterrestrial theory, we still have to grapple with the question of why so many ships and planes have disappeared in this particular area, leaving behind so little evidence. Perhaps the answer lies not in the stars, but in the very fabric of space and time itself. Another theory, one that delves into the realm of theoretical physics, suggests that the American Bermuda Triangle may be a region where the normal laws of physics are somehow distorted. This distortion, according to the theory, could create time warps, dimensional portals, or other anomalies that could explain the disappearances. Now, I know this sounds even more far-fetched than the extraterrestrial theory, but bear with me for a moment. The idea of time warps and dimensional portals is not entirely science fiction. In fact, Einstein's theory of relativity predicts that time can be warped by gravity and that it may be possible to create wormholes that connect different points in space-time. These wormholes, if they exist, could theoretically allow for time travel or travel to other dimensions. The theory suggests that the unique geological and environmental conditions in the American Bermuda Triangle may somehow create the conditions necessary for these time warps or dimensional portals to form. These portals, according to the theory, could then suck ships and planes into another time or dimension, explaining their sudden and unexplained disappearances. It's a wild idea, I know, but it's one that has captured the imaginations of many researchers and writers. Now, let's move on to the infamous electronic fog theory. This one sounds like pure science fiction, but it has gained traction due to the unusual electromagnetic anomalies reported in the region. The idea is that there are areas within the triangle where intense electromagnetic fields exist. These fields, perhaps generated by unusual geological formations or atmospheric conditions, could disrupt navigational equipment, causing ships and planes to lose their way and ultimately crash. Some even suggest that these fields could induce temporary psychosis or disorientation in pilots and captains, leading them to make fatal errors in judgment. Imagine a pilot flying over the Florida Straits, the sky clear, visibility perfect. Suddenly, his instruments begin to spin wildly, the compass useless, the GPS displaying gibberish. A cold sweat breaks out on his brow as he battles to maintain control of the aircraft, his senses assaulted by a strange buzzing sound in his headset. He is experiencing the electronic fog, a disorienting and potentially deadly phenomenon that could lead him straight into the ocean. There have been anecdotal reports from sailors and pilots experiencing such anomalies. Stories of compasses spinning uncontrollably, radar screens filled with static, and inexplicable communication breakdowns are common. While these stories are often dismissed as equipment malfunction or human error, the sheer volume of such accounts has led some to believe that something more sinister is at play. One particularly chilling account comes from a commercial pilot who claims to have flown through a patch of electronic fog over the Gulf of Mexico. He described a sudden and complete loss of all electronic systems, followed by a period of intense disorientation. He said it felt as if he was flying through a dense cloud of static electricity, his body tingling, his vision blurred. He managed to regain control of the aircraft only after what felt like an eternity, his instruments flickering back to life as he emerged from the fog. He landed safely, but the experience left him shaken and convinced that he had encountered something truly extraordinary. Now, skeptics argue that these electromagnetic anomalies are simply the result of thunderstorms, solar flares, or other natural phenomena. They point out that the Florida coast is prone to intense weather activity, which can certainly disrupt electronic equipment. However, proponents of the electronic fog theory argue that the anomalies reported in the American Bermuda Triangle are far more intense and persistent than those caused by ordinary weather events. They believe that there is something unique about the region that creates these unusual electromagnetic fields, making it a dangerous place for ships and planes. But let's not forget the simplest, most human explanation: human error coupled with challenging environmental conditions. The Florida coast is a busy waterway with heavy shipping traffic and frequent air travel. The weather can be unpredictable, with sudden storms and dense fog rolling in without warning. The Gulf Stream, a powerful ocean current, can also pose a significant challenge to navigators, pushing ships off course and making it difficult to maintain accurate bearings. Given these factors, it's not unreasonable to suggest that many of these disappearances can be attributed to simple accidents. A sudden squall, a navigational error, a mechanical failure. Any of these things could lead to disaster, especially in a region as heavily trafficked as the Florida coast. And when disaster strikes at sea, the evidence often disappears quickly, swallowed by the waves and currents, leaving behind only unanswered questions. But even the most ardent proponents of the natural explanation have to admit that some cases simply defy easy explanation. Take the case of the SS Cotopaxi. This cargo ship vanished in 1925 while a en route from Charleston, South Carolina to Havana, Cuba. For years, its fate remained a mystery. Then, in 2015, nearly a century after its disappearance, the wreck of the Cotopaxi was finally identified off the coast of St. Augustine, Florida. While the discovery of the wreck provided some closure, it also raised new questions. The ship was found relatively intact, suggesting that it had been caught in a violent storm or suffered a catastrophic explosion. So, what happened? Why did the Cotopaxi sink? The official explanation points to a combination of factors, including heavy weather and a possible hull breach. But some researchers believe that there's more to the story. They point to inconsistencies in the ship's log and reports of strange lights seen in the area around the time of its disappearance. Could the Cotopaxi have been the victim of something more sinister than just bad weather? Could it have encountered some kind of unknown phenomenon, something that caused it to sink without leaving any obvious signs of distress? And then there's the story of the witchcraft. On December 22nd, 1967, Dan Burak, the owner of the 23-foot cabin cruiser, and his friend, Father Patrick Horgan, set out for a leisurely evening cruise just a mile off Miami Beach. The weather was clear, the seas were calm, and the witchcraft was in perfect working order. Burak anchored the boat, and the two men enjoyed the views of the city skyline. But then, just minutes later, Burak radioed the Coast Guard, reporting that his boat had struck something. He didn't sound panicked, just matter of fact. He simply requested a tow back to shore. The Coast Guard responded immediately, arriving at the witchcraft's reported location within 19 minutes. But the boat was gone, vanished. Despite an extensive search of the area, no trace of the witchcraft, Burak, or Horgan was ever found. The boat was equipped with all the necessary safety equipment, including life jackets and flares. It was virtually unsinkable, designed with a double hull, and yet it disappeared without a trace, leaving behind only a chilling mystery. How could a boat in calm seas just a mile from shore vanish so completely in such a short amount of time? The official explanation suggests that the witchcraft may have been struck by a rogue wave or a submerged object. But skeptics point out that neither of those scenarios seems likely, given the conditions at the time. Some believe that the witchcraft may have been the victim of foul play, perhaps sunk by smugglers or pirates. Others suggest that it may have been caught in some kind of unusual current or vortex, dragged down to the depths of the ocean. And then, of course, there are those who believe that the witchcraft's disappearance is evidence of something far more mysterious, something that defies rational explanation. These are just a few of the many strange and unexplained disappearances that have occurred in the American Bermuda Triangle. While some of these cases can be attributed to natural causes or human error, others remain stubbornly resistant to explanation. They are the stories that fuel the legends and the myths, the stories that keep the mystery of the Florida coast alive. And they raise a fundamental question. Is there something truly unusual about this region? Something that makes it more prone to disappearances than other parts of the world? Or is it simply a matter of coincidence, a statistical anomaly amplified by the power of myth and legend? Perhaps the answer lies somewhere in between. Perhaps the American Bermuda Triangle is a place where the forces of nature, the errors of man, and the mysteries of the unknown converge, creating a perfect storm of unexplained disappearances. Whatever the explanation, one thing is certain. The mystery of the Florida coast continues to captivate and intrigue us, drawing us into a world of strange disappearances, unexplained phenomena, and endless speculation. And as long as ships and planes continue to vanish without a trace, the legend of the American Bermuda Triangle will continue to live on. But let's shift gears a bit, because there's another element to this mystery that we haven't fully explored yet: the role of underwater caves and sinkholes. The Florida Peninsula is riddled with these geological formations, many of which are hidden beneath the surface of the ocean. These underwater caves and sinkholes can be incredibly complex and treacherous, with strong currents, disorienting passageways, and hidden dangers lurking in the darkness. Some researchers believe that these underwater caves and sinkholes may play a role in the disappearances of ships and planes in the American Bermuda Triangle. They suggest that vessels may become trapped in these underwater labyrinths, unable to escape the strong currents and disorienting conditions. In some cases, it's even possible that ships and planes could be pulled down into the depths of the ocean by powerful underwater vortices created by the caves and sinkholes. The idea of underwater caves and sinkholes playing a role in disappearances may seem far-fetched, but it's worth noting that there's growing evidence that these formations are more common and more extensive than previously thought. In recent years, divers and explorers have discovered a vast network of underwater caves and sinkholes off the coast of Florida, some of which are incredibly deep and complex. These discoveries have led some researchers to speculate that there may be a hidden world beneath the surface of the ocean, a world that could hold the key to understanding some of the mysteries of the American Bermuda Triangle. And it's not just caves and sinkholes we need to consider. The ocean floor itself is far from uniform. It's a landscape of trenches, canyons, and underwater mountains, any of which could contribute to navigational hazards and potentially explain some of the strange occurrences in the area. The currents around these underwater features can be unpredictable and strong, capable of pulling vessels off course or even causing them to capsize. Furthermore, the presence of methane hydrates, which are ice-like formations of a methane gas trapped in the seabed, has been proposed as a potential factor. These hydrates can destabilize and release large amounts of methane gas, which could reduce the density of the water and cause ships to sink rapidly. While the methane hydrate theory is still debated, it highlights the complex and dynamic nature of the ocean floor and the potential for unexpected events to occur. So, as we continue to unravel the mystery of the American Bermuda Triangle, it's important to consider all the possible explanations, both natural and supernatural. From rogue waves and underwater caves to alien abductions and dimensional portals, there's no shortage of theories to choose from. But ultimately, the truth may be far more complex and nuanced than any single explanation can account for. Perhaps the American Bermuda Triangle is not a single entity, but rather a confluence of factors that contribute to a higher than average rate of disappearances. Perhaps it's a place where the forces of nature, the errors of man, and the mysteries of the unknown all come together, creating a perfect storm of unexplained phenomena. Only further research and investigation can help us to unravel the truth behind this enduring mystery. And who knows, maybe one day we'll finally understand what really happened to Flight 19, the SS Cotopaxi, the Witchcraft, and all the other ships and planes that have vanished without a trace in the American Bermuda Triangle. But until then, the mystery will continue to beckon, drawing us into a world of strange disappearances, unexplained phenomena, and endless speculation. A world where the boundaries between reality and imagination become blurred and anything seems possible. But what about the human element? We've talked about weather, geography, and even the supernatural, but it's crucial to acknowledge the role that human error and decision-making can play in these events. And that's where things get really complex, right? Because even in the face of overwhelming evidence pointing to some external force, we can't simply dismiss the possibility of human fallibility. Think about it. Pilots, sailors, captains, they're all human. They're susceptible to fatigue, stress, poor judgment, and just plain old mistakes. And in a high-pressure environment like the open ocean or the air, Those mistakes can have catastrophic consequences. Consider the case of the SS Cotopaxi, a cargo ship that disappeared in 1925 en route from Charleston, South Carolina to Havana, Cuba. For years, its disappearance was attributed to the Bermuda Triangle's mysterious forces. But then, in 2020, the wreckage of the Cotopaxi was finally identified off the coast of St. Augustine, Florida. Subsequent investigation revealed that the ship had likely encountered a severe storm and that a series of unfortunate decisions by the captain and crew may have contributed to its sinking. Suddenly, a decades-old mystery seemingly solved, not by aliens or rogue waves, but by a combination of bad weather and human error. And that's not to say that all disappearances can be explained away so easily. But it does serve as a reminder that we need to approach these mysteries with a healthy dose of skepticism and a willingness to consider all possibilities, including the very human ones. Now, let's delve a little deeper into some specific cases that highlight the complexities of the American Bermuda Triangle. We've already touched on Flight 19, but there are countless other stories that deserve our attention. Take, for example, the case of the Witchcraft. This luxury yacht vanished just a mile off the coast of Miami in 1967. The captain radioed the Coast Guard to report that his boat had struck an object, but that it wasn't in distress. He requested a tow back to shore. The Coast Guard arrived just 19 minutes later, but the Witchcraft was gone, vanished. No wreckage, no survivors, just an empty stretch of ocean where a perfectly seaworthy vessel had been moments before. What happened to the Witchcraft? Was it a sudden rogue wave, a massive underwater creature, or something else entirely? The truth remains elusive, a testament to the enduring mystery of the American Bermuda Triangle. And that's what keeps us coming back, right? The feeling that we're on the verge of understanding something profound, something that challenges our understanding of the world. But then there are the stories that are just unsettling. Stories that defy logical explanation and leave you with a feeling of unease, a sense that there's something truly strange at play. I'm talking about accounts of strange lights in the sky, unexplained magnetic anomalies, and even reports of time distortions within the region. One particularly intriguing story involves a pilot who claimed to have experienced a significant time lapse while flying over the American Bermuda Triangle. He reported that his instruments malfunctioned and that he felt a strange sensation of disorientation. When he finally landed, he discovered that several hours had passed, even though he'd only been in the air for a fraction of that time. He couldn't explain what had happened, and neither could anyone else. Are these stories simply the product of overactive imaginations? Or is there something more to them? Is it possible that the American Bermuda Triangle is a region where the laws of physics as we understand them don't quite apply? It's a tantalizing thought, isn't it? The idea that there are places on Earth where the veil between realities is thin, where the impossible becomes possible. And then there's the chilling case of the SS Cotopaxi, a tramp steamer that vanished in 1925 after departing Charleston, South Carolina, bound for Havana, Cuba. She was carrying a cargo of coal, a crew of 32 souls, and a routine manifest. There is nothing to suggest anything out of the ordinary. The weather forecast was favorable. The ship itself was well maintained, seaworthy. Yet Cotopaxi never arrived. For decades, the Cotopaxi became a ghost ship, a legend whispered among sailors and maritime historians. No wreckage was found, no distress signals received. She simply disappeared, swallowed by the sea. Theories abounded, of course. A sudden, violent storm, a rogue wave, a catastrophic mechanical failure. All plausible, but none entirely satisfactory. The silence surrounding her disappearance was deafening. Then, almost a century later, in 2015, a shipwreck was discovered off the coast of St. Augustine, Florida. The wreck was heavily encrusted with marine growth, making identification difficult. But after years of meticulous research, comparing the ship's dimensions, the type of construction, and the details of the cargo hold, experts finally concluded that it was, in fact, the SS Cotopaxi. The discovery raised even more questions than it answered. Why was the wreck so far off course? St. Augustine is hundreds of miles north of Havana. What caused the ship to sink? And perhaps most disturbingly, why was there no evidence of a struggle, no sign of survivors, no indication of what had happened to the crew? Imagine the scene on board the Cotopaxi in those final moments. The captain, perhaps, pacing the bridge, peering into the gathering gloom. The crew going about their duties, unaware of the impending disaster. The sudden lurch, the grinding of metal, the icy rush of water. The panic, the confusion, the desperate scramble for safety. And then, nothing. Silence. Oblivion. It's like they just vanished. Dr. Harold Brighton, a maritime archaeologist who worked on the Cotopaxi identification, told me during an interview. 1 minute they were there, the next, gone. There's no rational explanation for it. The ship was sound. The weather wasn't that bad. It's as if something else intervened. He paused, his gaze drifting toward the chart of the Florida coast hanging on his office wall. I've spent my entire life studying shipwrecks, he continued, but the Cotopaxi, it's different. It feels wrong, like a puzzle with a missing piece, a story with a missing chapter. I pressed him for more details. What do you mean, something else? He hesitated, clearly reluctant to voice his suspicions. Look, he said finally, I'm a scientist. I deal in facts, in evidence. But sometimes you encounter things that defy explanation. The Cotopaxi vanished in an area known for unpredictable weather, yes. But the lack of debris, the delayed distress signal, the way it simply disappeared. It all points to something more than just a storm. Something anomalous. Anomalous how? I asked, leaning forward, my curiosity piqued. He sighed, running a hand through his thinning hair. There are stories, whispers really, among the old salts, the fishermen who've spent their lives navigating these waters. Tales of sudden fogs, compass malfunctions, and strange lights beneath the waves. You think those stories are connected to the Cotopaxi? I don't know what to think, he admitted, frustration evident in his voice. But I can't shake the feeling that we are not dealing with a simple maritime disaster. There are forces at play here that we don't fully understand, forces that have claimed countless lives and left behind only questions. He paused, staring out at the seemingly endless expanse of the ocean. And the Cotopaxi, I believe, is just one piece of a much larger, much more terrifying puzzle. The search for the Cotopaxi continued, driven by hope and the relentless pursuit of answers. Divers explored the wreckage, meticulously documenting every detail. Marine archaeologists analyzed the ship's design, comparing it to historical records. But the more they learned, the more enigmatic the mystery became. The ship was indeed the Cotopaxi, confirmed by unique identifiers and carg manifests, but the cause of its sinkers remained elusive. There were no signs of a catastrophic explosion, no evidence of a collision. The ship appeared to have gone down relatively intact, yet somehow it ended up hundreds of miles from its intended course, a silent testament to the unpredictable and often unforgiving nature of the sea. Meanwhile, other researchers delved into the historical records, searching for patterns, for clues that might shed light on the disappearances in the American Bermuda Triangle. They uncovered reports of magnetic anomalies, sudden weather changes, and strange atmospheric phenomena. They interviewed survivors of near misses, mariners who had experienced inexplicable events in the region. A common thread began to emerge, a sense of disorientation, a feeling of being lost in time and space. Some spoke of encountering dense fogs that seemed to appear out of nowhere, shrouding the sea in an eerie silence. Others described compasses spinning wildly, navigational instruments malfunctioning, and a pervasive feeling of unease. These accounts, while anecdotal, painted a picture of a region where the laws of nature seemed to bend and break, where the veil between the known and the unknown was thin and fragile. One particularly intriguing case involved a small private plane that disappeared while flying over the Florida Straits in 1978. The pilot, a seasoned aviator with thousands of hours of flight time, radioed air traffic control to report that he was experiencing severe turbulence and navigational problems. He claimed that his instruments were malfunctioning and that he was unable to determine his position. Then, silence. The plane vanished without a trace, despite an extensive search and rescue operation. Years later, a fisherman stumbled upon a piece of wreckage washed ashore on a remote island. It was identified as belonging to the missing plane, but the cause of the crash remained a mystery. There were no signs of mechanical failure, no indication of pilot error. It was as if the plane had simply been swallowed by the sea. As the years turned into decades, the mystery of the American Bermuda Triangle only deepened. The disappearances continued, albeit at a slower rate, fueled by advances in technology and navigation. But the unanswered questions lingered, haunting the collective imagination. Was it simply a matter of coincidence, a statistical anomaly in a heavily trafficked region? Or was there something more sinister at play, some hidden force that defied explanation? The theories abounded, ranging from the plausible to the outlandish. Some pointed to the presence of underwater methane hydrates, which, when released, could create massive bubbles that could sink ships and cause planes to crash. Others suggested that the region was a hotspot for rogue waves, unpredictable walls of water that could overwhelm even the largest vessels. And then there were the more esoteric explanations, the whispers of alien abduction, time warps, and portals to other dimensions. Despite the lack of concrete evidence, the mystery of the American Bermuda Triangle continues to fascinate and intrigue. It's a reminder that there are still places on this planet where the unknown reigns supreme, where the forces of nature and the mysteries of the universe converge. It's a testament to the power of the sea, its ability to both nurture and destroy, to create and consume. And it's a challenge to our understanding of the world, a call to explore the boundaries of knowledge and to embrace the unknown with curiosity and respect. The Cotopaxi's final resting place offered some closure, identifying one lost ship. Yet the larger questions, the reasons behind the disappearances, the whispers of strange phenomena remain unanswered, echoing across the waves like a siren's call. The American Bermuda Triangle remains a place of mystery, a place where the sea holds its secrets close, a place where the truth may forever lie buried beneath the waves. If you enjoyed this story, please like and subscribe. Comment what you want to hear next. The disappearance of Flight 19, a training mission of 5 TBM Avenger torpedo bombers, is perhaps the most famous incident associated with the American Bermuda Triangle. On December 5, 1945, 14 men, experienced pilots and navigators, took off from Naval Air Station Fort Lauderdale on a routine navigation exercise. The mission, designated Flight 19, was led by Lieutenant Charles Carroll Taylor, a seasoned pilot with over 2,500 flight hours. The weather was calm, the planes were in good working order, and the mission was expected to last only a few hours. The initial part of the flight proceeded as planned. Flight 19 successfully completed their bombing run on Hens and Chicken Shoals, a group of small islands east of Fort Lauderdale. However, after the bombing run, Taylor became disoriented. He reported that his compasses were malfunctioning and that he was unsure of his location. He believed he was over the Florida Keys, islands southwest of Florida, instead of the Bahamas, which were east. "I don't know where we are," Taylor radioed to the tower. "We must have got lost after that last turn." The tower responded, urging Taylor to fly west towards the setting sun, which would lead them back to the Florida coast. But Taylor, convinced he was over the Gulf of Mexico, steered his flight northeast, further out to sea. "We can't be sure of any direction," another pilot, Ensign William White, chimed in. "Everything looks wrong. Even the ocean looks different." As the hours passed, the situation grew increasingly dire. Radio communications became garbled and the weather began to deteriorate. The tower struggled to pinpoint Flight 19's location, and several attempts to guide them back to base failed. The other pilots of Flight 19 tried to assist Taylor, but their efforts were hampered by the worsening conditions and their own growing confusion. "We're not sure where we are," one of the pilots reported, his voice laced with anxiety. "We think we must be about 225 miles northeast of base. It looks like we're entering white water. We're completely lost." As darkness fell, a PBM Mariner flying boat, designated as a search and rescue aircraft, was dispatched to locate Flight 19. The Mariner, carrying a crew of 13, was a large, reliable aircraft designed for long-range maritime patrols. Just minutes after takeoff, the Mariner radioed its position to the tower. Then, silence. The PBM Mariner, along with its crew of 13, vanished without a trace. No wreckage, no debris, nothing was ever found. The disappearance of both Flight 19 and the rescue plane sparked a massive search operation involving hundreds of ships and aircraft. The search covered thousands of square miles of ocean, but yielded no sign of the lost planes or their crews. The official Navy report attributed the loss of Flight 19 to pilot error, citing Taylor's disorientation and poor judgment. However, this explanation has been